All right, what's going on, world? It's your boy Pablo. Want to make a quick video with something that's on my mind. I know a lot of you guys who pay attention to the show. We typically record every Sunday, and so we should be recording something. If it won't be tomorrow, it'll definitely be the beginning of the week. So if we don't record tomorrow, obviously the big game's going on. We're not going to have a huge viewership because of the game, but that's okay. I wanted to take advantage of this day and talk about something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. It's that Matt. Matt, what's up, brother? How you doing, man? So, real quick, I want to jump into it. Black History Month. I know there's a big ass game going on this weekend. I know that that's going to be the focal point this weekend. I understand. I get it. I live in Atlanta. Atlanta's where Super Bowl is being held. Atlanta's hosting it. It's going to be a big ass deal. So I get it. This is going to be the focus. However, with that being said, doesn't mean that we need to take a break away from the month that it's in. Black History Month is the one of the most important times for not only this country but for Black people as a whole. So I wanted to do a video not to discuss Black History Month because I think that's just something that is regurgitated over and over and over again. But I wanted to have a discussion about how Black History Month and the course of actions from how the month came to be and the people who affected it to allow me to even do this video. So that's what I want to do. So before we get into it, as always, I'd like to let you guys know that I'm going to save this video to Instagram. I'm also going to save it and upload it to our Foreign Millennials Facebook page, as well as I'll have it on my YouTube page in case you want to check the video out later. If you're not familiar with our podcast pages, it's Foreign Millennials. It's the number 4IN Millennials on Facebook, here on Instagram. You can also send us an email, foreignmillennials@gmail.com, or just shoot us a DM. You can shoot me a DM at Pablo.Canadian, as you already know by watching this. Also, feel free to reach out to the homie Duchalla, Duchalla on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter as well. So so Black History Month, right? We all have our notable figures that paved the way for doing something like this, being able to interact through technology, right? And you're saying to yourself, how does the notable figures like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, all these people who have paved a way, right, to allow us to have very simple freedoms, right? And again, not going to go into a huge history lesson about all that, but I wanted to have a discussion about how it affected me and how I deal with race, and how I deal with certain ethnic groups, dealing with identity, things of that nature, from not only being a child, but even till now, right? How I'm able to even interact with other cultures and other ethnicities, right? So because of what they've done, because of them putting their lives on the line, has yes paved the way for Black people in this country, especially in all of North America, to be honest with you, to be able to have simple luxuries that in some instances we tend to take for granted, because we weren't there during the fight. We are reaping the rewards of what work others have put in the past. Okay, but again, that's what I want to talk about is not necessarily just that. It's my experiences in life. So, speaking of race and dealing with other cultures, for those who don't know, I don't typically look like your average Black dude, and that was a reminder that I I got this past week from a gentleman that's been training me with the new job. And he knows that I'm black, obviously because of previous conversations. But he said when he first met me that he at first kind of wasn't sure if I, not that I really wasn't black, but that I don't typically look black. And obviously with the identity of black people, it's very diverse now. Like, it's not just, you're not going to look like you're fresh off the boat from Africa, black. You know what I mean? Like, you're not every black person is going to have, really dark skin, coarse African styled hair, very natural look. Not every not every black person has, big lips, a big nose, wide eyes. There's always your stereotypical look in every culture. And so, my trainer, when he met me and I told him that, I'm where I come from, being that I was born in Canada, being that, my family's Jamaican, we don't just look one way, right? We don't just have one ideal look. And so it reminded me, and I wanted to do a video earlier in the week when he brought it up, but I was at work. So I wanted to wait till this weekend and have that discussion. So being that it's Black History Month and understanding how Black history and what civil rights leaders and Black people as a whole have done to me and what it had provided me and allowed me to enjoy the life that I have right now, that's what I wanted to talk about. So, how has that affected me? Well, me really understanding Black people and the struggles that they've had really affected me more on an emotional level once I moved here to the U.S., okay? Especially living in the South. It's racism is very much in your face. It's a lot more in your face and real in the South. Now, I'm not knocking the South, okay? There's major perks to living here. And I'm not going to get into the whole economics of it too much. This is more along the lines of just the experience. But before I go into it as an adult, I'm going to go into it more in as a child. And so for me, certain things like Black History Month as a child living in Canada was significant because it was simply just a reminder of the history as a child living in Canada. Now, your experience as a Black person living in Canada as an adult may be different than that as living as a child. So I want to differentiate that real quick. I left Canada when I was 15, been in the US, been in Atlanta ever since. But I still have a significant memory and experience being Black living in Canada. Enough, so much so that what I had experienced has stuck with me and made me into who I am currently right now in this day and age. And so being Black living in Canada and understanding Black history, it opened my eyes to what people who I am connected to had experienced. Now, at that time, it may be different in Canada now, but as a kid, Black History Month was important and we discussed it, but it was Black history was a small portion of what we had learned in school at that time. And what I mean by that is obviously with the Underground Railroad, with Africans and Black people, or even Black Americans born in the country at that time, making their way into Canada, that's where you'll find the connection between Canada and Africa and America for Black people was the Underground Railroad. And so, majority of the reasons why there are so many Black people living in Canada is mainly because of that reason. So what did that do for me? So I guess what I can do is I can kind of go into a little bit about just me and how I'm Black, I guess. So my mom and my dad are both from Jamaica. Okay, they're both Jamaican. They're both Yad Picnic, I'm coming from Yad. My dad I think he's from somewhere near Kingston, either that or Mandeville, I can't remember. My mom is from St. Elizabeth, Flagaman area. They're both Black, okay? They both left when they were kids. They left Jamaica when they were kids. My dad went to England for the better part of a decade. Left in his 20s, I believe, and then moved to Canada where he met my mom. Now, my mom had already been in Canada. She left Jamaica when she was a kid and grew up in Canada and met my dad in their early 20s. My dad is Asian and Jamaican. Okay? So if anybody was to meet my dad, if he didn't open his mouth, you would think that he was a skinny, bald, heavily tanned Asian man. Okay? Until he opened his mouth and you heard a Jamaican accent, it would throw you off. All right? Like he throws a lot of people off. On top of that, when my dad really gets into his, liquored up stage, either the Jamaican accent will come out or the British accent will come out. Okay? He's a black man that looks and sounds and acts the way he does based on that. Okay? So that's my dad. My mom, in terms of looking, again, we're going to focus on the look of black people and what that means. My mom typically looks more black. Okay? So her pronounced features on her face, her darker skin tone, she just looks more black. Whereas her hair is a little bit more fine because in her bloodline, she has a mixture of East Indian, so Hindu Indian. She has a mixture of Syrian, and then also there's some Jewish in there that I found out that she had uncovered, I think, through Ancestry.com many years ago. So that's her makeup. Now, again, both my parents are black. Obviously, being that they are from Jamaica, the core of their ethnicity, their bloodline is African. But over the course of time, their family members had intermingled with other cultures and other ethnic groups. Therefore, they came out looking the way they did. But at the end of the day, they both identify as black. They come together. They have me and my sister. Now, when you look at me, this is the way I look. All right. I always get questioned for being black or Latino. I always get those two. Now, typically, I get that from people who live in the U.S. All right. Here, if you look like me, typically you're either going to be mixed with white or you just look Hispanic. You look Latino of some sort, whether you're Dominican, whether you're Puerto Rican. That's just what it is, right? Whereas my people, my West Indian people, they know that I typically look coolie. Okay, and the term coolie in the Caribbean, especially for Jamaicans and Trinidadians and Guyanese, coolie is more of your fair skin, more Indian features, straight hair. That's typically, the coolie term. There was a derogatory term, sort of like a half breed or a mulatto or anything along those lines. It was a term that was thrown around, kind of like nigga, that kind of thing, nigger, that kind of thing. Coolie was a derogatory term. Over the course of time, even growing up as a kid, it wasn't a derogatory term. It was just a word to identify that although you're black, your features are different than that of your Afro-Caribbean or African looking black person. All right, you have mixed cultures in you. You came out looking like this. The term was then used to identify those people. That's me, and I'm fine with it. So both my parents had me. Here we are. Now my sister, when you look at my sister, she does look like she is mixed with something a little bit, but her skin is a lot darker than mine. In fact, my sister and I look, to me anyway, we just don't look alike. We just don't. I don't think we look alike. I know a lot of people who, even we used to work for the same company. We would be in the same room together. People would never know that we were related. We could be standing side by side. People would say our names, both first and last name, never put two and two together. It's just simply because we just don't look alike. And so she came out with a little bit more of your atypical black look. Okay. But again, black is black either way. So growing up as a child, living in Canada, and for those who've listened to the show, I know typically I talk a lot about Canada, Toronto, and how great it is. And it is an amazing country. The city of Toronto is an amazing city. I will always uplift and glorify that city. It raised me and prepared me for who I am today, the kind of person that I am. It is the most diverse city in the world. You will literally find every known culture and ethnic group in that city within their own pockets of the city. That's just what it is. And so that's how I grew up. So for me, growing up as a kid, dealing with identity wasn't an identity issue. I know some of my family members think that I had like an identity issue, trying to determine whether I was black or if I wasn't. For me, what it wasn't that I was having issues trying to identify as black. I just knew that the world views black a certain way, right? If my co-host and best friend Duchala was standing right beside me, typically, let's be honest, if he was standing beside me, he'd be like, that nigga black, right? So for me as a kid, growing up with friends of mine like Steve, shout out to Steve, that man's black. Sorry guys, I lost connection there. So like I said, my man Steve, if he was here back home in Canada, he's black. He's black as well, just like I am. He has your typical look, his darker skin, more pronounced features, black. Some people view black a lot differently. And so for me growing up, I knew that I had something mixed within me. I knew that I had a bloodline that was mixed up with multiple cultures. And so I knew that in my mind that I wasn't as dark as my friend Steve. I knew that I wasn't as dark as a lot of other people that I grew up with. I knew that there was something in me that was mixed. My hair was different. The texture was different. My features were different. My skin tone was different. That when they were in the sun, it would take a lot longer for them to even get darker versus me. I could be outside for 30 minutes to an hour and I would get darker. So little things like that, I knew that I was different. Even though I was black, and I am black, I knew that I was different. So growing up, I always had that in the back of my mind. And it wasn't until I became an adult, when I moved here, that I really started following and falling into that one identity is and understanding fully that it's okay to be of mixed descent. But as a kid growing up, and I'm sure a lot of you out there can relate to this, you tend to understand who you are by who you associate yourself with, right? And so, because you don't know who you are until you've experienced life, right? You have to experience different things to add to who you are, to piece yourself together, and boom, this is you. And so as I grew up as a child in Canada, there were so many different people that I grew up with, okay? While I was growing up, I literally went to school with Asians, which includes Indians, Chinese, Japanese, people from Laos, Thailand, Vietnam. I went to school with Africans. I went to school with white people. I think I went to school with maybe one or two Latin people. I'll be honest with you, Latin people don't really like the cold unless they're in New York or Detroit. In Toronto, you're not going to find a whole lot. You may find more now, but when I was a kid coming up, I didn't really go to school with a lot of Latin people, maybe one or two, and I think one of them was from Brazil. Russians, you name it. I've literally, if I had my school class photo with me from like grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like it's just, this culture's just a whole, you could see the entire world in my class lineup. That's how I grew up. And I made friends as I grew up. But my real best friends, the core of my friendships that I have were with black men. And they were West Indian men. They were Caribbean men. That's who I associated with. That just made sense to me. As I became older and girls that I became interested in, that was different. I was attracted to everything. I was attracted, and I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid to show interest in a white girl, in an Asian girl, in a West Indian girl, Didn't matter where the girl was from. If I thought you were cute and attractive, I went for it. And I've maintained that even to this day. But realizing the conflict in that, realizing the conflict in dating, for an example, really didn't resonate with me until I moved here. And when I moved here, I never really understood until maybe about 10 or 12 years ago, like, dating outside of your culture here is still very taboo. And it's it's still in a lot of ways frowned upon. And I want to preface this real quick that I understand why, completely get it. But how I go about life is different. And so dealing with relationships with people outside of my ethnicity, there's a reason why. And there was something that I had to come to terms with and come to grips with when dealing with friends of mine who 90% of my friends are Black. I have quite a few Latino and people that I hang out with. Shout out to my homegirl Lauren, her husband Vonnie, Cynthia Max, Parm, whose family is Middle Eastern. She's Middle Eastern. Those are my friends as well. And I'm sure I'm missing a few people, and I'm sorry, guys. But majority of my friends are Black. And so dating outside of my culture is not something that most of my friends do. They just don't. And I never really understood why. I thought it was just them and just the preference. For some, it is just a preference. For others, it's like, I'm interested, but I can't. And there's reasons why. And so the reasons a lot of friends or Black individuals that I come in contact with that don't date outside their ethnicity is because, to be honest with you, they were raised that way, especially when it comes to dating white people. I've got friends of mine and coworkers of mine that I've had this conversation with that, they were warned, if it's a Black man, don't bring a white girl home. Right? Or, hey, if you're going to bring a white girl home, or even before they even had that conversation about dating white girls or dating any girl outside of their ethnic group, my friends who, grew up as kids, hearing stories of their parents, living in the, the 50s and 60s in parts of this country where, they saw their friends hanging from trees, lynched, right? And their parents are telling them this story and building that resonant emotional feeling of racial tension and prejudice that people like them, my friends, their family members and other friends and other people they know, people that look like them dealing with racism. And so growing up and becoming an adult, white people signify that pain. It signifies that pressure. It signifies the trauma. And so the trauma for me was different. Yeah, my mom, my dad, my uncles, pretty much the older generation, 100% dealt with way more racism, way more prejudice, way more bigotry than my generation, by far. And it's going to be the same thing for my son. And all of my friends who have kids, their kids are not going to deal with the same stuff. It is progressively going to get lighter. It is what it is. It's just, that's the way it's going to be. But for friends of mine who don't date outside their ethnicity, again, part of it is preference. The other part of it is they literally know that they shouldn't because, the pressures of what other people are going to think. For me, I didn't have that. I didn't grow up in a household where, although I knew, shout out to my uncle Robert really opened my eyes when I was a kid. My Uncle Robert was a huge historian in Black culture. He's probably the most intelligent person in our family, if not one of the most intelligent people in our family. And so as a child, he used to have Spike Lee movie posters on his wall. I remember Do the Right Thing and Mo Better Blues on his wall. Malcolm X. He used to wear Malcolm X glasses when he was younger, when I was a kid. And so he used to teach us things we watched all of Roots, which was, whew, man, that was torture. It was boring, but it was educational. Didn't realize how educational it was until I reflected on it much later in life. He taught us everything about Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, all of that. I knew that as a kid. Even before I moved to this country, I knew that. But I didn't have an emotional connection to it because the real life experiences that they had seen, they knew that that wasn't something that I was going to experience. They knew that bestowing that trauma and that those issues onto me, they knew that was going to affect me in a negative way. They knew that it's not something that I'm going to experience. And that's kind of my privilege. Black people do have a level of privilege depending on where you live in the world. And what I mean by that is I lived in a world where I wasn't fearful because of the way that I looked. I didn't have that sense of fear walking down the street. I grew up somewhere where I didn't have to worry about, going to school and if it's going to get shot up by a white person. I didn't have that fear. That wasn't sitting behind me. I didn't have my family saying, don't date a white girl because, it's going to lead to whatever. I didn't experience that because where I come from, there's not a whole lot of it. There's still racism there, but it's not to the degree that it is here. Here it's heavily marketed, commercialized. It is still in some ways glorified, and it is still very much relevant and prevalent to this day and age. It's still here. But I didn't have that trauma because not only is my family very ethnically diverse, but my parents, because of where they were raised and where they came from, that wasn't really there. They lived in a world where it progressed a little bit further. So not until I came here that I started dealing with and understanding the effects of racism and what it means to be Black in the world, but most importantly in this country, because of people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X had done. And really understanding from firsthand accounts with people who experience it, knowing even to this day that Mississippi is the poorest state in the country, and I'm pretty sure within the last 10 to 12 years that there still have been incidences of lynching, Black people being hung in really country-ass parts of those states. And I'm just using Mississippi as an example. I'm not picking on Mississippi. I'm just using that state as an example. There's been parts of Texas. I think there was a story like 10 years ago of a brother who was dating a white girl out somewhere in Texas. And they stripped him down bare naked, tied him to the back of a truck and pulled him down a highway and left him out in the middle of nowhere because he was Black and he was dating a white chick. Like certain things like that happened 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and even before that, still happening to this day. That happens. And so, you really start to understand the reasons why Black people, especially in this country, are the way they are when it comes to other ethnic groups, especially white people. But for me, there is still that emotional trauma that I cannot connect with. I can have an understanding and appreciation for what Black people have gone through, have a formal understanding to a certain degree of Black History Month and the people who fought for this month to even exist. All of that knowledge, taking my privilege, taking my intelligence, taking, again, the knowledge and doing something such as the show, the 4Millennial Show, and breaking those stereotypes of how Black people are viewed and pushing things in the right direction. However, because of that trauma, because of that understanding of history and things that are still happening today with systemic oppression, that in itself is not going to cause me to lump every white person into a bucket. I still know plenty of people, friends of mine, who will only associate with white people on a business level. They don't want to have white friends. They don't want to date white girls or any ethnic group for that matter. They just don't want to. And I have no choice but to understand where they're coming from because their experience is different than mine. But at the same time, a lot of people that I know, whether it's friends in the past or even coworkers who are like, look, man, I don't fuck with white people. You know what I mean? I'm not going to do that. Because of this, that, and the third. I guess because of where I come from, I have come in contact with good white people, good Latin people, good Asian people. But I also have negative experiences. My first real negative experience, there's been a few, but the real most traumatic experience that reminds me that even though we have Black History Month, even though I can buy a house and buy a car and have a bank account and walk down the street and do a lot of the things that white people do, there is still that reminder. So when I was about 20, I want to say maybe 22, I went to a car meet, and I may have told this story to you guys before, but again, because it's Black History Month, it's a constant reminder of my experience, and that's why I'm sharing it. So me, my boy Nick, my little brother Chris, we all grew up in a town called Alpharetta, just north of Atlanta, and we were heavy into cars, just like I am now, still very much heavy into cars. And we went to a car meet, and there's, I would say maybe 20 people out there. And of those 20 people, it's 3 black dudes. It's me, Nick, and Chris. And in the distance, in the parking lot, it's a huge shopping center in the parking lot. I see this green truck in the distance, just zipping through the lanes, the parking lanes. It's an empty parking lot until you get to where all these cars are, where everyone's doing the car meet. So they come around. They drive through one section of where the cars are parked in the parking spot, and you can see that it's like a white dude driving. It's a white dude in the passenger seat. I think 2 other white people in the back. One of them was a girl. So they come into our lane and wind down the windows, and I think one of them threw a can out or something like that and say, "Fucking niggers." So at first, my first reaction was like what? You know what I mean? Because you didn't do anything. You know, it's not like you were antagonizing and instigating an issue or problem. But you know, when you hear the N-word versus when a white person says it, it's 2 different things. And so, you know, as I'm 23 years old, it's me and a friend of mine, or Chris and Nick. And when you hear someone drop that, at least for me, my first reaction was, wait a minute, what? And so the anger wasn't my first reaction. And part of the reason is because that's not something that I typically have experienced in the past. So it took a lot longer for me to react. Once I had come back to my senses and realized, damn, they're hating me because of the way that I look, as well as my homeboy Chris and my homeboy Nick. Chris wasn't having it. Chris grabbed his car. I jumped in his car. We go searching for those boys. And we finally find them at a Wendy's parking lot. One dude comes out of the Wendy's restaurant, and I meet up with dude. We start scrapping, right? I beat the hell out that boy. I was pissed. I was pissed because wasn't as pissed because I was affected by it. I was pissed because, like, not only did I not do anything, but my mans didn't do anything, right? And so you found a reason to degrade us. You found a reason to demean us and use that word to hurt us verbally. And it affected me, right? And so I felt the need to stand up for my bros. So we went out, we fought those boys. When we came back to the parking lot, cops showed up. Someone must have called the cops, right? Now, mind you, it wasn't Nick that called the cops. It wasn't me and it wasn't Chris. So it must have been a white person that called the cops. So the cops show up, and when they show up, they question the crowd. Then the whole crowd and the cops come to us. And the cops say to us, "Do you want to press charges?" Or what happened? So we explain what happened. "Do you want to press charges?" So he looks at me and I said, you know what? Nah, I'm not going to press charges. Because to be honest with you, this instance is a small indication of things that constantly happen. And by me trying to hold those boys accountable is not going to do anything. It's just something that's going to dissipate into the system, the judicial system. Nothing's really going to happen. It's a waste of everyone's time. But I'm telling the cop, I just want you to know that this is what happened. And there's a helicopter above the whole nine. So that was my first real indication of why Black people feel the way they do in this country. And so Black History Month, again, is a reminder of those experiences that I've had in the past. And so that was my negative experience. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've had way more positive experiences with white people than I do with Black people. I'm sorry. I've had way more experiences with positive experiences with white people, with good white people, than I've had negative experiences with white people. That's just what it is. I just have. That doesn't mean because of the positive experiences that I have negate or take away from the things that are still happening to this day or things that have happened in the past. It just means that I choose to go through life allowing certain people to come into my life who just so happen to be white and are positive. And so my positive experiences, just one of many, is more recently. And so I've conveyed to you guys in the past that on the show we've discussed anxiety and depression. And so that's something that I had suffered from. I still deal with a little bit of it today, but not so much because I've eliminated those pains and those triggers that attributed to my anxiety and depression, but it's still there. And so sometime late last summer, I was thinking about leaving the company that I was with, and one of my coworkers who is not only a coworker and been a coworker for 5 years, but he was also a good friend. His name is Eric, white dude. I met a guy named Bill through him. But before I get to that, Eric and I really connected on cars. We drive very similar cars, and so we kind of built that relationship, not only from the company we work with, but just from that commonality of automobiles. And Eric and I, we just solely built a relationship off of that. Now, I have an understanding that, yeah, even to this day and age, there are white people, like a lot of people, but when it comes to Black and white people and racism and segregation and slavery, there is a really bad stereotype of a lot of white people. And a lot of white people are like this, that they still take advantage and use Black people to their own benefit in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm very much privy to that, and I have an understanding of that. But every now and then, you're going to meet someone outside of your ethnicity that you can trust, someone that you can feel safe with. And so Eric was one of those guys. And so I'm on the phone with Eric again. This is late last summer. I'm on the phone with Eric, and I'm telling him, look, man, I'm thinking about leaving the company. I'm not happy here. The reason is because I've been suffering with anxiety and depression. And, you know, I know the job is attributing to that. Now, mind you, in the back of my mind, I knew that not only, you know, when you're dealing with anxiety and depression, that you know, whether you're on medication, whether it's prayer, whether it's therapy, you know, whatever the case may be, you know, there was something that I knew I was missing that I wanted, that I thought maybe would help me in terms of dealing with anxiety and depression. And one of those things was, you know, I want to be in a focus group. I want to be, you know, I want it to be something that's not scripted. I want something that's more organic, something that's just more genuine. You know, I want to sit in a room of other people who are like me. And I knew that I wanted to be in a focus group, but I didn't know where to go. I had no idea what to do with that. I didn't know who to call, what to Google, you know, should I be with a group of Black men? Should it be a group of white men, old men, young men, whatever? And so that's in the back of my mind. So while I'm telling Eric that I'm dealing with this, he says, look, brother, you consider me a friend? I say, yeah. He's like, I consider you a friend. We've always connected on cars. But I want to help you. And mind you, Eric is Georgia boy, straight up from the South. He lives and breathes Georgia. His viewpoints are from his perspective as a white dude from Georgia. He's got no reason to associate with me beyond just our connection at work. So Eric is like, look, man, I love you, brother. I want to help you. I go to Dunwoody Baptist Church. Why don't you come with me? I want to pray with you. I want to put you around a table full of men who are going through similar things that you're going through. I said, that is exactly what I've been looking for. So mind you, after about a week or two, I ended up going to the focus group at 6 o'clock in the morning. And in this focus group there's one brother. There's about 20 men. I'll say about 20, maybe less than that, maybe 15. There's one brother in there, old man, old brother, probably in his late 60s, early 70s, I would assume. One Spanish guy, and the rest are old white men who live in Dunwoody, which tells you they've got some privileged lives and money, right? So Eric brings me, and I meet another white guy. Same thing, Southern boy, Georgia boy, to the day he dies. His name is Bill. And both of them extend their time and availability to help me heal. Not because they wanted to take advantage of me, not because they wanted to see me struggle. They wanted to help me. They knew that not only was it the right thing to do, not only was it the godly thing to do, but it's just the human being thing to do. That although they know I'm black, they know that my experiences in this world, especially in the South, are different from theirs. They wanted to do nothing but pray, help, love, and heal me. And that is something that typically I only experience with my own people, right? Anybody who's of melanated nature, automatically they want to help you. Not every black person obviously wants to help you. Let's just be honest. But my friends and my family members, most of them are black. They want to help me. And so, random two white guys who are like, look, let's put all that to the side. I'm a godly man. I'm a human being. I'm a compassionate person. You need help. We want to help you. These guys have no reason, none whatsoever. They didn't have to put in the effort. They didn't have to wait till the following Tuesday to drive away from their homes and meet me at Chick-fil-A every Tuesday morning to talk about our struggles and pray. They did that because they wanted to help someone that they knew needed help. Now, that's my positive experience. Now, I'm not saying that all white people have the best intentions, because they don't. I'm not saying all black people have the best intentions, because they don't. The lady that I'm dating right now, she's white. There's always been that discussion of everything from, you can't date someone who doesn't understand your struggle. That's true. However, I'm not going through life holding on to my struggle. I'm not allowing it to define me. I'm using it as a tool to progress me. I'm utilizing what I have learned and what I understand about people to allow me to move through life. And I don't care if you're black, I don't care if you're white, I don't care if you're Hispanic, Asian. If you can add value to me as a human being, I'm going to rock with you. Plain and simple. Whether I'm dating you or whether we're going to be friends. When two white dudes go out of their way to, even to this day, and it's been like 5-6 months, even to this day, they send me text messages. Say, brother, how you doing? How are you? I'm good, man. I appreciate you reaching out. We just want to make sure you're good. They treat me like my best friends do. And I love them and I appreciate them for it. But I'm expressing this experience because although I may be different than a lot of my brothers and sisters out there who are still dealing with a lot of the trauma of this day of dealing with other cultures, I at the same time must use my own privilege to try to provide that peace and love through my own experiences. That although I can't change their experience, I can't change their viewpoint, I at least will allow what I've gone through to open their eyes and be more open-minded. And to be honest with you, to be able to have this this discussion, to even have my show, to even be able to date someone outside of my ethnicity and still be alive, to be able to live in this condo, to driving the car that I have, to the job that I have, to being able to invest in the stock market, to do whatever, right? To do whatever, even though it's not enough, even though being black in this country, you're still not an equal in a lot of instances. And that, but at the same time, we've come a really long way. I'm grateful for where we are. But I'm going to, in my own way, help push people who look like me, whether lighter or darker. I'm still in my own way going to push the culture forward. I make a conscious decision to understand that where I am right now and the decisions that I make and what I'm doing is because of people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Marcus Garvey, whoever else, right? Who have fought for reasons for me to safely leave my condo and walk down the street. To be able to do that is because of these individuals. On top of that, it's also because of the people who are still in their own way on the front lines fighting, trying to make sure that black people have the same level of freedoms and rights that white people do. And again, like I said, my own way of doing that is not only having videos like this, but also doing our radio show. Shout out to Producer T and Duchala. We do our best to try and at least contribute to our community, at least vocally, at least address it, at least work towards breaking the stereotypes. Not having to look at every black man like they're going to rob you, right? Having those conversations that we are intelligent beings, that having darker skin is not a bad thing. That is in our small way of affecting positivity when it comes to black folks by taking what individuals in the past have done for black rights, and not taking our position in this country for granted, and pushing the culture forward. And so in order to do that, I have to convey my own experiences, both negative and positive. And you take it as you will. And how you choose to go through life from that point is based upon that exact fact. But again, being that it's Black History Month, we have to remember, regardless of what's going on, Super Bowl, Trump, whatever, we still have to remember why we're here. We still have to remember how we got here. We still have to reflect and give thanks for people who are dead, who lost their lives to allow you to watch me on Instagram. It's that simple. So please don't allow the distractions to drive you away from what's really important. But besides that, go out there, y'all. Have fun. Enjoy yourselves this weekend. I know I will. I spread love. I spread awareness. I spread thankfulness. Shout out to everybody who supports our show. Shout out to Producer T, Producer Chris. Shout out to Ryan Duchala, my boy, my co-host, the homie. Once again, hit him up on Instagram, Duchalla. That's Duchala on Instagram. Hit him up on Twitter as well. You can hit me up on Instagram, as you can see. You can also hit me up on the YouTube channel. Pablo the Canadian's on there. We also have the 4Millennials channel, 4millennials.com, 4millennials@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts. If you agree or disagree with this video, if you want to have a further discussion with me about experiences in life, I would love to. Send me a DM, whatever you want to do. Other than that, peace and love to you guys. Please be safe out there, and talk to you soon. Later.